I'm Laurie Cardoza-Moore, and this is Focus on Israel. The war for the hearts and minds of our children still rages in America. The textbooks being used to teach our children must be correct, factually accurate, unbiased, and reflect our values. But are they? Textbooks have become weapons to indoctrinate our children with anti-Judeo-Christian, anti-American, and anti-Semitic rhetoric. We cannot afford to lose this battle. Hello, I'm Laurie Cardoza-Moore, founder of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating and sharing the message of Christian biblical responsibility to the people and land of Israel in the face of a growing global anti-Semitism. Proclaiming Justice to the Nations was birthed to stop the silence, to wake up Christians and people of conscience to the realities of a world bent on destroying Israel and the Jewish people. This is doubly important for reaching and teaching the next generation sound biblical doctrine as it relates to Israel. Unfortunately, in the public school system and on university campuses, there is a very heavy onslaught of both anti-Christian and anti-Israel indoctrination. Those who are driven by an extreme hatred of both Yeshua and Israel are aggressive in their focused goal of capturing the hearts and minds of our youth. One of the primary battlegrounds is America's educational systems. Our children's textbooks are being rewritten by Islamists. They are literally being rewritten, eroding the foundations of our Judeo-Christian faith and its virtues. Because the textbooks are stored now in digital formatting, it's all too easy for someone to go back and edit to simply erase our godly heritage and beliefs as a nation, and then write in a politically correct form of propaganda that has an agenda behind it, including pushing the teachings of Islam. Today, textbooks around the world are blatantly used as tools for propaganda. We know, for example, that in the Middle East, the children's textbooks are being slanted, favoring Islam and its teachings, and denouncing Judaism and Christianity. And we would expect that to be the case. However, the shocking reality is that we are seeing the very same biases against Judaism and Christianity in Western society in our own American schools. Islam is being favored, while our faith is being belittled and presented in a questionable light. Many times, both Judaism and Christianity are listed in American textbooks as legends, tales, or fables, while Islam is being portrayed as fact and even glorified. Some textbooks go so far as claiming that Christianity was started by a young Palestinian named Jesus. Many textbooks include negative stereotypes of Jews, Judaism, and Israel, and they discredit the ties between Jews and their land of Israel. Israel is blamed for starting wars. There are repeated misrepresentations that cross the line into bigotry. While textbooks tend to glorify Islam, they tend to be critical of Jews and Israel and disrespectful of Christianity. How has this happened in our own country and in our own backyards? Organizations like the Council on Islamic Education have been allowed to put much influence, and the unfortunate result is textbooks that are anti-Christian, anti-Semitic, and anti-Israel. We as Christians and American citizens must wake up and understand that we are in a major battle for this next generation. And sadly, it would appear at this time that we are losing the battle. Taking advantage of our vulnerable youth is one of their top strategies in how to gain a foothold in order to bring a country under Islamic rule, little by little. On our program today, you'll be hearing from Dr. Sandra Alfonsi. Dr. Alfonsi is recognized as an international expert on the propaganda that is presented to America's children in the educational system. She presently serves as a senior academic fellow of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations. She has a background of more than 25 years in reviewing textbooks in the United States, originally from grades 6 through 12. She started working with National Hadassah and created a portfolio called Curriculum Watch, which was actually dealing with the textbooks. Her extensive background and experience on the ground was invaluable and should motivate you to join the battle.
I started doing this with National Hadassah. They created a portfolio called Curriculum Watch, which was a misnomer because it is not dealing with curriculum, it's dealing with the textbooks. Without the correct textbooks, there's no sense in studying curricula. From the moment that Hadassah, under Debbie Kaplan, who was president, started it, and from the moment that I saw the first textbook, we have a problem that exists easily from the early 1980s. And the problem, it's not different today. It's just far more advanced. It's far more dangerous because before there were textbooks with typographical errors, with grammatical errors, factual errors, but nothing you would really say there's something going on. And then I met a book. That's how I speak. I don't meet people, I meet books. I met a book by Macmillan Company, and I was reviewing it for Hadassah, and I reviewed the whole textbook according to the mission statement of Hadassah, which I knew. Judaism is a world religion. The Holocaust, which we didn't say the Shoah, we taught the word, that was years later. So Judaism is a world religion, the Holocaust, and what I like in the fluidity of time, the history of Israel from biblical times to the present. So that's very fluid because every year is another another advancement. So that's what I started with. At the beginning, anything that was historically incorrect about Judaism as a world religion, wrong king, wrong names, that was changed. Anything about the Holocaust that you could prove, the biggest thing was if they had only a paragraph, they said they don't have room for 2 paragraphs, so I said, okay. And I reached this understanding with Holt, with Macmillan. If I exchange 10 words that are wrong for 10 words that are correct, will you accept that? I said, there won't be any change in how many lines. I said, can I eliminate a line and put in a correct line? And that's how we bargained. I understood that they couldn't expand it because the textbooks were not as big and the print was not as small as it is now. But I opened Macmillan and I went through Judaism as a world religion, and then I went to the Holocaust. Macmillan was the first company to lowercase the H of Holocaust. They lowercased it and it was no longer capitalized. Now, for the people who don't understand the meaning, when you take away the capital H from Holocaust, you make it a synonym to genocide. It removes it as the tool of extermination of the Jewish people. We were very fortunate that, and this is what, we only lost 6 million. But if you multiply 6 million and their progeny, we lost a lot more. But that is why when I see people writing about it, I go after that, because whether they know what they're doing or they're doing it because they're equating, that is what happens when you lowercase it. But Macmillan also said that the 6 million Jews were the collateral damage of World War II. Those were the exact words. Facing me in this textbook was a Holocaust with a small h and a statement that the 6 million were the collateral damage of World War II. So that was how I got started, and that is what it means to do this work. But that was in the early 1990s. But the problem, I have to say, the problem exists from 1974. Saudi Arabia gave $6.4 million to the Stanford Research Institute in California. The $6.4 million seems like nothing. but it came from Saudi Arabia. There wasn't any Qatar money. There wasn't any Libyan money. $6.4 million was put into the Stanford research in, it's not Stanford University, the Stanford Research Center in California, for the purpose of developing a plan. And they wanted to, they did it. They were looking to establish or to create a 5-year plan by which Saudi Arabia could put in about $140 billion into the American education system and media system. Now, for what purpose? Their goal. And their goal, they were brilliant, because it was done like feeding pablum. You could read it, there wasn't anything hidden, you could understand it. Their goal was to change how the American government and the American people looked at the Middle East, how they looked at the Arab world, and how they looked at Israel. Involved in that was K through 12, the university system, and involved in that was the elite media. And the elite media was targeted in print and on television. If you look at New York Times and you look at CNN, you understand the embodiment, and you look at the textbooks, and then the textbooks reflected, first and primary, was to change how the Middle East is taught. Now, you can't rewrite history on your own, but almost simultaneously with that money that came in from Saudi Arabia, a year later, Qatar added its money. So if you're looking at approximately 1976 to 2019, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, but then Gaddafi poured millions of dollars into Georgetown University. A lot of money went into strategic places, and we need to understand, we as Americans need to understand that Georgetown University has been manipulated by Arab petrodollars for one thing and one thing only. That is where the diplomats of the State Department are educated. And so if you look even at a Jew, if you look at someone like Dennis Ross, you look at the diplomats that come out of Georgetown University, you understand, hands down, the anti-Semitism and the anti-Israelism. And no one can separate, no matter how they try to do it and make it esoteric. You're anti-Israel, you're anti-Jewish, you're anti-Jewish, you're anti-Israel. There's no gray area where you can just play around. But this is what they were doing with that money.
I want to take you to Israel in pictures and film. I want you to see how God's sovereign hand can be seen before our eyes right here in this land. That's why PJTN is offering a special anniversary package that includes a captivating new book and award-winning DVD. Israel Rising is a unique visual story of Israel's miraculous journey from unforgiving desert to thriving nation. Thousands of years ago, the prophet Ezekiel foretold a future time in which the arid land of Israel would come alive for its people. Now this breathtaking book documents the fulfillment of this vision, as rarely seen photographs from the 1880s to the 1940s are juxtaposed with recent photos of the same locations. This book will inspire and captivate you as it illuminates Israel's foretold awakening in a new and unforgettable way. In addition, you'll receive the award-winning documentary, Israel Indivisible, The Case for the Ancient Homeland. This inspiring film examines the many political twists and turns that make Israel the world's most controversial nation. From Abraham and the Promise to the issues facing the Jewish state today, the film examines the historical, archaeological, legal, and biblical foundations for the modern state of Israel. This is a limited time offer for these two remarkable resources for just a one-time gift of $70 today. Your generous donation will help ensure that PJTN stays on the front lines and in the headlines of all the important issues facing Israel and our Jewish brethren. So please go to pjtn.org today. From studying history, it's very clear that what starts with the Jews never ends only with the Jews. We must strongly stand against any anti-Semitic trends, for if not stopped, they'll cause harm to all of us, and we'll witness the downfall of our Judeo-Christian Western culture. Today, many people say there's no longer a need for a Jewish state, that Jews around the world no longer need a place of refuge. But anyone who has heard recent statistics about the worldwide rise in anti-Semitism would never make such a claim. The reality is that neo-Nazi groups and Nazi sympathizers are increasing around the world. Surveys show that over 1 billion people in the world harbor anti-Semitic attitudes. Close to 50% believe that Jews have too much power in the business world, and 2/3 of the world's population has never heard of the Holocaust or believe the historic accounts of it are inaccurate. Don't let yourself be manipulated by evil people with a wicked agenda. When the self-serving villains are in control, good people from all religions suffer. Muslims, Christians, and all people of conscience should stand proudly and show respect for a country that gives so much to the world in so many ways. Do your part, do your research, and do what you can to make a difference. Because what happens in Israel does affect us all. This is not just a Jewish or just an Israeli problem. This is a problem for all humanity, for each and every one of us who believe in freedom and human rights. Learn more about what you can do at pjtn.org.
I spent a lot of time at the consulate with, I call him Effie, who was the consul for academic affairs. And one day he said to me, would you be willing to do something for Israel? So I thought, this is a strange question. I'm sitting in the consulate. I said, what, Effie, what do you want me to do? He said, I want you to do, Israel wants you to do this. I said, well, until I know what it is that you're telling me that Israel wants me to do. He said, would you be willing to look at the doctoral dissertations in this country to see whether there's money in there, and by examining the doctoral dissertations to see if that is what is fomenting the anti-Israelism on the campus and go back into the textbooks. Because everyone says, oh, you know, it started on the campus. It didn't. It started in the plan to go after K through 12. And that's where we formed, and that was a time where from Israel we have the new historians, and we brought their professors who are left, they're a column, they're leftists. So I did the study for 4 years. That's why I say lovingly that I'm the best paid volunteer in the world. But Israel couldn't ask an Israeli to do the research because they would be attacked as meddling in a foreign nation. So he said to me, you're an American, you're an academic. I said, oh yes. I said, what is it that you'd like me to do? And I did for 4 years. And here we have doctoral dissertations approved that are flagrantly erroneous, that are anti-Semitic, they're anti-Israel. There were dissertation upon dissertation done on the use of Arab oil. The problem of the United States being pro-Israel, but that started in the doctoral dissertations. But the departments, the chairman of departments, one after another, they approved those PhDs. These people were granted PhDs. The danger with approving the PhD, it legitimizes the dissertation. The dissertation goes to the Library of Congress, gets an ISBN number, and becomes legitimate research. So I have found, I always call them my Arabs. I found them, I thought, oh my God, here he is being quoted as research because he was granted a degree on this. Then you find these same ones who graduated have been, in Florida, been arrested on the college campus as being tools for ISIS, being tools for the, at that time before there was ISIS, there was the pro-Palestinian propaganda. That was basically what it was called. So this money that started at $1.6 million that went in to give $140 billion, it took care of everything. But all of this is all, nothing was done in a hurry. And that's why I call it the Arab Master Plan. But I use the word sarcastically, with the wisdom with which this plan was implemented. When we tried to go to the state boards of education, when we tried to go to the superintendents, these are dangerous textbooks. no one understands how the word can be dangerous. But then you see what the word lights in the classroom. We have violence in the classroom, but we have the Palestinian vocabulary. The Palestinian story has two types of language. That language is in the textbooks. It's visually in the textbooks with photographs. The biggest problem is now that there are books that are digital, they embed videos in the textbooks, and those videos are indoctrinating. And that is why when I met my first digital book when I was doing Truth in Texas textbooks. So when I watch something and when I read something, that's how I do it. But this is the problem in the textbooks, that this has been done strategically not to frighten the Americans. And I don't know any other way to verbalize it, but the language of the Palestinian narrative, I had never heard it spoken. I had read it in the textbooks. So I recognized it, but when I was called back, I was very blessed and honored, not necessarily in that order, but blessed and honored to be called back by the Texas State Board of Education in Austin. And I was the first. I am an Israeli-American citizen. I'm a citizen of Israel. I'm a citizen of America. But I was the first non-American to be called to testify, because I've done all of their work. I was called to testify to stop CARE from removing one sentence from the TEEX, and that one sentence would have put the Arab-Israeli conflict back up to just a word in internascent battles over land. I saw the Palestinian narrative narrated, and I always wondered, how are the textbooks so powerful? Because our kids don't like to read. Their attention span has been shattered for years by the games, the computer games. So they're not big readers. So I thought, how are they digesting all of this? It's not just the written word. And then I heard the Palestinian narrative. And this man got up in his 30s, a Palestinian, and to testify in front of the board, because for the first time I heard the language. It didn't frighten. It was musical. It worked on your heart. It was that there are 8 million Palestinians who must return because the Israelis stole our homes. There weren't even 8 million refugees, but this was the Palestinian narrative, said so non-threatening, on the heartstrings, melodious. But when the vote came, it was very interesting, because first of all, I had 3 minutes to speak. 1 minute was used up introducing myself. So I had 2 minutes to give this whole answer, and one school board member raised his hand at the end because he said, Dr. Alfonsi said, I'm going to give you 15 minutes to respond so that you can tell us exactly why we need to keep this sentence. So it gave me the opportunity to speak about the Arab League, which I then found that when the president of the State Board of Education polled each person on the vote, here was the only Muslim, an African American converted to Islam. He had the audacity to say, I had never heard of the Arab League until she raised this sentence. And besides that, we don't have a curriculum to teach this. So I said, but they teach the Arab-Israeli conflict year in and year out. Of course they have the curriculum, they just have the wrong textbooks. So another board member said, if you don't mind, I'm going to reword the sentence. And I looked at Roy and I listened, because here was this gentleman that came back with a sentence that was stronger. The language was stronger than the original sentence that the TEEX had adopted. And I said to myself, okay, I did a good job, because word for word what I said about the Arab world and the Arab League, he rewrote and wrote the Arab League into it, and it passed 11-4.
It is now imperative that parents and citizens across every state mobilize to take back control of our children's education system. Parents and citizens across every state must contact their state representatives. Please join me on the next edition of Focus on Israel as I continue my discussion with Dr. Alfonsi. The time to take a stand is now. Be a leader in your community and in your church. One person can make a difference. Get involved with and support pro-Israel organizations such as PJTN. Call your senators, congressmen. Let your elected leaders hear from you. Visit our website to learn more. Sign up to receive action alerts and order our films to share with family and friends. Please encourage everyone you know to tune in and become informed. God bless you, and thank you for all you do on behalf of our Jewish brethren and all Israel. We'll see you next time on Focus on Israel.
To support this program, send your tax-deductible gift to Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, P.O. Box 682711, Franklin, Tennessee 37068. You can also support PJTN online. Visit pjtn.org or call 1-877-873-9020.
Anti-Semitism has reached epic proportions, and Israel is now surrounded by nations who seek its destruction. For Israel to lose just one battle would mean losing everything. As Christians, it is our biblical responsibility to stand with our Jewish brethren and Israel. PJTN needs your help to reach more Christians with this urgent message. Please visit our website to become a member today and order our award-winning documentaries. You must decide that you won't be silent. Sign up now at pjtn.org. God bless you, and thank you for your support and prayers.